All right, I think we'll start. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Saint Joseph, pray for us. The history of the Josephites is more than a simple statement. The Josephites came to California in 1963. That is a historical fact, but what led up to it is the subject of this talk. Their sister congregation, the Daughters of Mary and Joseph, had been in California for many years and were attractive vocations which led them to evaluate their own future. They discussed and discussed where they were going and what they were going to do with their novices and professed religious. In the early 1960s, they started thinking and talking about opening a high school. While at a meeting of their congregation in Belgium, one of the sisters was in a conversation with a priest who happened to be from Los Angeles, and he told the sister about the Cardinal McIntyre, who was at that time building high schools all over Southern California in the Archdiocese. They heard about this and they became interested in the fact that he was starting what they called co-instructional schools. You had a girls section and you had a boys section, but they needed an order of priests to run the boys section. So the Archdiocese was wondering where they could find a religious order of priests. And they were not totally unaware of the fact that the Josephite had a school in Weybridge. At the same time, across the pond, unaware of the DMJ's interest, we were also experiencing a growth in vocations. And the Josephites were talking about opening another school not too far from Weybridge. Weybridge is in County Surrey, about 30 minutes from train from London. But anyway, Father Peter Murtaugh, a Josephite, a man of vision and leadership at St. George's College, was exploring the idea and approached a number of English diocesan bishops about the idea of the Josephites opening a school. The bishops are all welcoming, said, "Oh, great, marvelous, but we can't afford to build a school. You will have to build it." Oh, they were that big of a congregation. They said, "Well, we can't do that." So that sort of died. At about this time, Vatican Council was beginning to take shape, and somehow the DMJs heard about the Josephites' interest in a school. Would they come to California? They asked themselves. The suggestion was made to Father Peter that he come to Rome and meet Cardinal McIntyre to discuss the idea. They met, and when the Cardinal told him the Archdiocese is currently building high schools and the Josephs would be more than welcome to come. We'll build a school, we'll pay for it, the buying of the property, all you do is run it. Oh, music to their ears. They couldn't believe it. Well, it all began then. The new school being planned for Santa Maria was taking shape on paper. Remember, it's 1963. Father Peter was invited to come to meet the superintendent, Monsignor Sharp, who was my high school principal. He left in the middle of our senior year. We were glad when he left. He came and the superintendent flew him up, Monsignor Sharp flew him up to Santa Maria to look at the proposed site. Originally, the land was in town, up the street from Santa Maria High School, near the railroad tracks, where now the bus terminal buildings are located, near the railroad tracks. Well, that turned out not to be a very good idea. So they decided, let's look elsewhere. They looked at Orcutt, corner of Bradley and Patterson, Bradley and Foster. And even though Rigetti High School was going to be built across the street, they weren't too concerned about the high school being close, the two closest schools close together. So a concern about the other concern at the time was that the diocese was going to build St. Louis de Montfort Parish on the same property as the high school is going to be built. And so, oh my God, if you look at this parish site with the grammar school and the softball field, and look at all what St. Joseph has, imagine putting all that in the same place. Well, the DMJs and the Josephite said, not a good idea. And the bishop agreed. So they said, well, let's look for another site. So they came to Foster, and they came to the corner of Bradley, Clark Avenue, and this property here. And so they decided to build the parish here, and the high school would be over there. Everything was happy. The only problem now was They were going to name the school like all the other schools that were being built at the time: Paraclete High School out in Lancaster, Reverend Day High School down in Los Angeles. This place was going to be called Sapiencia High School. The sisters and the Josephites said, Sapiencia? No, wisdom is good for a high school. You want to teach wisdom, but to be called the Saps? That's what they would expect to happen. So they convinced the bishop that St. Joseph High School would be a better name, since they was the founder, he was the inspiration behind the Josephites and the Daughters of Mary and Joseph. So now back in England, back a few years, the community had accepted the idea of coming to California. Now they had to decide who to send, how many men. They decided in 1963 to invite their Belgian confreres to become partners with the English confreres. This would be the first time in the history of the Josephites that you had the Belgian Josephites and the English Josephites all working together in the same school in a new country. That was revolutionary for them. It was an eye-opening experience. Wow, that's going to be challenging. Finally, in 1963, the Josephites had decided to invite their Belgian confreres to come. So in August of 1963, the English community sent Father Bennett Woodman, Mark Newman, Michael Egan, and from Belgium, Emile de Mol and Franz Claes. So on a hot day in August, Southern California, the Josephites were picked up at LAX and taken to the DMJ's retreat center in Palos Verdes to adjust to the time lag and to get a little bit accustomed to California weather in August. Within a few days, this is where Father Aiden's little article in the bulletin says, I met them at the airplane. Not quite. It was 2 days later. Within a few days, Sister Mary Jench, DMJ, the newly appointed vice principal for St. Joseph High School, drove Father Woodman, Mark, and Emile to Pius X High School in Downey, where they would spend the first year, or so thought it would be the first year and only year, teaching at Pius X. But the Josephites were at Pius X High School from 1963 to 1992, 29 years. We were at Pius X High School because that was the longest span of Josephites over the years, and the longest span was with Fathers Campion and Alfred. But at Pius X High School was their first time teaching in a co-ed high school. The Josephites in England, it's an all-boys school, boarding school. They never taught girls in their life. Now they're going to be teaching girls in a mixed school. What are we facing? What's going to happen? And so this is where I got involved with the Josephites. After Sister Mary Jench, Gertrude Mary at one time, dropped them off at Pius, she came to my house, which is just 2 blocks away, and said to me, I just told me all about the Josephites and what they were doing, what they were going to start. And she said, don't you have a TV? How she knew I had a TV, I don't know. But she said, can you lend them your TV? Sure, why not? So I put my little TV, like a small Admiral TV, in my Volkswagen Bug and drove up to Pius and knocked on the door. They didn't know who I was from Adam and what I was doing there. And I asked them if they wanted a TV set to borrow. Fine, okay. So I came into the house. There they are sitting in the house in English wool suits. It's August, remember. And they got their jackets on. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, they're not going to survive in this weather with those clothes. So I offered to take them shopping to buy some clothes, which we did. They also didn't have any means of transportation. So my father took Father Bennett out to buy a car. They got a car. He also bought a little Honda 50 so he could go to Masses on the weekend for supply work. All this was in August of 1963, and I began my weekly visits to visit the Josephites on Sunday evenings, climbing over the fence sometimes. I was at Long Beach State and had always wanted to be a priest since the 5th grade. I had not considered a religious congregation. I didn't know what they were about. I didn't know about poverty. I thought, oh, that sounds awful. But so I never even thought about them. Anyway, I got to know the Josephites every Sunday night, visiting them for that school year. In 1965, I graduated from Long Beach State, and I remember seeing Father Anthony in a classroom at Pius and telling him I was interested in joining the Josephites. Oh, he got so excited. He said, let's go tell the others. So we walked across the property to the house, the little house that's still there, and we walked into the house, and he had to tell them. So now then, I joined in 1965 up here in the old house, Patterson Road, for the novitiate, for the novitiate year. A young man who joined in '64 had already left. I recall the peach trees in the back of the part of where our house is. You know, it used to be a big slope. We had to bring all kinds of filter. I'll talk about that later. But the peach trees were there, and the ladies came in every summer, and she bottled the peaches. They were delicious on cereal. So Father Bennett, being a full-time teacher at Pius, was a busy year for him, coming to talk on the phone to Father McCabe, who'd been appointed financial administrator for the school. The Josephites had never run a high school in California, unless most of the archdiocese, and so they had to get familiar with the financial end of running things. So McCabe was appointed the financial administrator to work with them until they were capable of doing it on their own. It was during Easter vacation in 1964 that Father Bennett and Mark came to Santa Maria to see how things were going. It was their first time to come to Santa Maria. So they came in August of '63. Now it's Easter vacation, Easter midterm of '64. And they came up to see what was going on. Construction had already started, but when they got here, it's like, oh my God, are we going to be ready to open the school in August? It didn't look like it was going to be finished. And they had problems. Prior to moving to Orcutt in '64, my father assisted them with buying another car, one for Santa Maria and one remained at Pius. So Fathers Mark and Bennett moved to Orcutt in June of 1964. And the Archdiocese had purchased 3 homes on the corner of Patterson Road and Bradley. You got where Sister Catherine lives, the DMGs for the high school sisters. On the other corner, the Josephite house was on this corner, and across the street was the elementary school sisters' house. So they had all 3 houses right there, in nice close together. The others remained at Pius X High School, where Father Clace was attending Loyola Marymount, and Father Egan was teaching in the high school. If you read my little book, the bulk of this book was really all about, what was written to Father Michael Egan wrote letters back to England, and they're all in here, which talked about basketball games. He loved them, and he enjoyed watching the cheerleaders do all kinds of stuff. At any rate, that's in that book. Registrations for the high school began, get this, on the trunk of their car in Santa Maria at the airport where they were having Mass for the parish. So that's where they started their work. And it became apparent very soon that attracting families to a Catholic high school in Santa Maria, a redneck town, cowboy town, attracting kids to come to a Catholic high school, that's going to be difficult. And they soon found out that getting enrollment, they would have less than 50 freshmen in the first year. So they didn't need all these nuns and Josephites to come up to Santa Maria. What would they do? So they stayed, that's why they stayed at Pius for 29 years. The first year saw the school not fully ready to occupy students or teachers. Many a day they would be in a classroom teaching, and some workmen would come, knock on the door. We have to put the floor tiles in here. Can you please move to another room? So they pick up their desks and walk to another room. During the same 5 years, early 5 years of the school, parent boards were formed. Parents interested in athletics started working on making a football field and a baseball diamond way back in the back. The parents formed a parent board and a sports body. So now back to the years of '64, '65. Just after they'd settled into their new house on Bradley Road, they got another Josephite, Father Alphonse Skelchins, who was my novice master. And a young man applied to join in the novitiate in '64. He left before I got there. But they needed a house for Father Skelchins and the novice, who joined, as I said, '64. And the Archdiocese does not provide houses for religious orders. You've got to have your own house. So Father Bennett is involved with trying to get the school going, being principal and teaching as well, heard of a house on 180 Patterson Road. So he made inquiries, negotiated a purchase. Guess what that house cost? 1.5 acre property. And that house cost $23,000. That was the barracks L-shaped building. Not very sturdy when we bought it, and it deteriorated over the years until we built a new place. And I'll talk about it in a minute. In '65, Father Bennett Woodman returned to England. He was the first superior and the first principal at St. Joseph's. He returned to England, and Father Bede came to California and was appointed the regional superior. Father Anthony Rhodes came with him and joined the staff at Pius X High School. Father Mark was appointed principal and held that position from 1965 to 1975, when then I assumed that position as principal. Having been at the school for 3 years, working on my master's degree in counseling and guidance at Cal Poly, starting in 1972, and I finished that in '75. I was appointed principal until 1987, 12 years. So in 1966, there were 5 Josephites at the high school, and as the Bradley house was too small, the Archdiocese purchased a nice new 2-story house, 989 Brookside Avenue. The owner of that whole building section, that housing section, had built that house for himself. But then he decided, I don't want to live in the neighborhood. I mean, all the people coming to me bought my house and say, well, I think this needs to be, this needs to be. So he says, I'm going to sell the house. And we bought it. The diocese bought it for us. And so we moved out of the house at the corner of Bradley and Patterson, and we had a nice house that had a nice chapel in the basement, 5 bedrooms upstairs, and 1 bedroom off the kitchen. And what was nice about it was easy to walk to St. Joseph High School. There were no houses, there was empty lots there. At this time, the priests were also getting weekend supply work at St. Louis de Montfort, St. Mary's, and later St. Patrick's and Aurora Grande. By this time, Father Anthony had arrived from England. It was the Pius X High School. It was a wood shop. Surprise, surprise, surprise. Wood shop. For a few years, and around 1970, he was assigned to St. Mary's in Santa Maria as associate pastor. It was not until '75 the Archdiocese approached the Josephs. I remember sitting in a meeting at Patterson Road, the old house, and Father, what was the name of the pastor there? Oh, it was, who was the retired pastor at St. Mary's? Kohlberg. He came down to our house, knocked on the door, and he says, the diocese called me. I know you're in a meeting, but they want to know if the Josephites are interested in taking on St. Louis de Montfort Parish. Oh, interesting concept. Something new as well. So Father Bede took Father Anthony, who had been at St. Mary's for 5 years or so, as associate, took him down to meet the Cardinal. And the Cardinal, Manning this time, had known Father Bede, Father Anthony, from golfing outings. And so that was a slam dunk. No problem. Sure, he can be appointed pastor. Josephites can take on the parish, and that worked out very fine. So they moved into the rectory, a little house over on Bauer Avenue with the backyard facing Clark Avenue. There was a gate there they could hop across the street to come to the parish until Father Anthony built the rectory. It was after several years and many young men coming and going that the Patterson Road novitiate house was getting too small, and at the same time, it was only 2 barracks made into an L-shaped house with 6 bedrooms and 1 used as a chapel. But it was getting old and in poor shape, it had to be replaced. We were offered property in Los Alamos, but we never got the deed to the property. And so, and I was arguing, that's too far to drive to come to school to teach. It's too drive to have priests come back and forth to do all kinds of things. So let's look at our property and see what the architect could do with the plans that he drew for Los Alamos to see if they would fit on Patterson Road. Flip the thing, it worked fine. All we did was bring in all this fill dirt to make the house level in the back. I mean, and the sewers, the toilets would drain to the sewer out on the street. Father Mayhew, by this time was Superior General, and he was here in 1975 when we had the groundbreaking for that new novitiate house. That house now was 30 years old and used by a number of groups, the parishes, the grammar schools, the high school. I'll be done in a few minutes. You're all right for the penance, for Stations of the Cross. So anyway, where was I? Legion of Mary was meeting there, Knights of Columbus, Josephite Associates, who were formed in 2001. So one could say the first 10 years were an exciting time for the Josephites. A number of Josephites came to California. From 65 to 66, started the largest influx with Fathers Campion and John. Father John got off the plane and was told he's going to have to teach philosophy to the scholastic. That was me, the poor man. So the number of Josephites at St. Joseph's changed, as did the principals. Father Mark, for 2 terms, he was principal from 65 to 75, and I took over in 75. After me, Father Mark took it back on again for a few years, and then Father Tom became principal, and he started the principal-president model. After Father Tom left, we've had only lay principals, 2 men, and most recently Joan Poloni, who retires this year after 40 years of teaching at the high school. I hired her as an English teacher, and she's been there for 40 years. She's retiring this June, and the new principal was announced yesterday to the faculty, and she's been hired from Arizona, and is a married woman with a daughter, I believe, and they'll be announcing her name in the paper, I assume, pretty soon. Of course, we started to populate the Santa Maria Cemetery with Fathers David Keene, Alphonse Skelton, Anthony Runts, and his brother Jimmy. Father Campion died while on vacation in England and is buried at St. George's College in Weybridge. Father Henry Baines and Hippolyte Goossens died after returning to Belgium. The number of novices and scholastics were also coming and going. We've had a variety of men. In fact, we started building that new house because we had about 3 or 4 young men in the order. They all left almost at one time. Anyway, the house got built. So happily, we will see Brother Gerardo, who is currently at St. Joseph High School teaching 2 classes. And in April, we'll go to St. George's College as part of what we call a stage year. And he'll work there in the campus ministry office with Father Martin Ashcroft. He will return at the end of June and be taking final vows on July 1st here at the 11:30 Mass on Sunday, July the 1st. Brother, he's finished his philosophy, and he will start theology courses at Berkeley in the fall, joining Brother Romaldo, who will also be finishing up his studies at St. Mary's College in Moraga, and they will live with the Capuchin Fathers. Brother Romaldo has to finish philosophy before he can apply for final vows. That'll be decided after he's finished philosophy. We also hope to welcome 2 new postulates this coming October. They would start their novitiate in January 2019, and the addition of a Josephite priest originally from the Cameroons, now in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, would come and join us at the novitiate house. That's my talk in 22 minutes. So what I can say what I'm thinking of doing is printing another booklet like we did the first time. This booklet here, that I think I have 3 or 4 copies left, but this has 36 pages in it. Pardon? And it has a lot of different information, but I'm thinking of maybe putting this together in a book similar to this, but if I do this, I want to talk to the daughters of St. Joseph and get more background information to the beginnings of the school, because they were instrumentally involved in this whole thing. And I've mentioned them here and there, but not enough information to really make the book worthwhile and more historical. And I need to get some more photographs of the novitiate house, and I got a nice picture. So there's the old house, the first on Bauer Street. Father Peter Murtaugh, founding and superior general. But anyway, some of these pictures I can use, and this is the back of the old house. I can use some of these pictures in here, and some of the pictures of the new house. So we'll see what's going to happen, and see where we can go from there. So if you're interested in more information than what I did tonight, there's a lot more to come. I was surprised that this took as many pages as it did, and that's what made me think. But Romaldo and Gerardo have been talking to me about, why don't you do another book? I said, well, I'm not sure about that. But now got all this done, I thought, it might not be a bad idea to have something else to give out. So we'll see. Okay? Thank you very much for coming. And you can stay at Stations of the Cross.